Okay, so Be'ez Hashem, we're going to learn a little bit about Inyan HaMilah, the idea of a bris. So we'll have to understand a little bit what is a bris, what are we doing with a bris, and why dafka over here where it talks about Avram, Parshas Lecha, so Lachnis Bris Shal Avram Avinu, that it's connected to Avram. What is this week's Parshas Lecha, the bris? So let's learn first. Let's start with the AriZal. So it's in Sefer Likudim Parshas Lecha. Soid HaMilah, the idea of the Milah, the idea of Bris. So in general in Bris there's two basic things. There's Milah and there's Priya. Mal Parakiloi Mal, right? That has to do the Milah and the Priya. In the Milah itself, there is a big conversation amongst the Paskim if the idea of the Milah is is it a mitzvah chat pa'ames that you have to make the Milah, you have to do the circumcision, or is it a mitzvah is that you should be mol or you shouldn't have an arla, right? So there's three ways out of it. Yeah, the Rakachava, Poyapul, and Nifal. This is the idea of a bris, and Parshas it's a pull and imsheches that we say that the bris is something that's continuous. It's not just you did the bris one time, but it actually has a continuous. And the famous proof for that is the Gemara that says about David HaMelech and Menachos. It says David HaMelech was Arum, and he said he was Arum in mitzvahs. He said in Skara Daitoi when he saw that he had a bris still, he was still carrying the bris. So it means that it's a pull and mshachas. It's a continuation. That the bris is something that's continuous, and the proof is because he didn't say his pants. Let's say, he could have looked at his pants or his head that was cut in a particular way. Obviously, it's not a mitzvah mshachas, right? But here is a mitzvah mshachas. But the idea basically of bris is there are two things, and there's really essentially there's going to be like a third thing that Ari is going to talk about. That one is the idea of the actual bris. So in bris, you're doing two things. You cut off the arla. After you cut, which is like the foreskin, you cut off the arla. After you cut off the arla, there's something that's called a priya. Priya is basically like there's a membrane or like a light membrane that you have to pull down, and that's the second thing. And the third thing is mitzitza. And okay, that's the three things. So there's the milah and there's the priya and the mitzitza. So the milah is like that. Da ki milah oile ki misper lekim imakar. That the word milah mem yud lamed hey is 85. With the koilo is 86. What is that? That's the name of Elakim. So that represents the idea of constriction and judgment. V'arla, and arla, the word arla is ayin reish lamed hey. So ayin is 70, 270, 200, and it's 305, right? Arla is keminyan elikim de yudin. This is like the minyan, the equivalent of the name of Elakim with the yud. So that means with the yud is you spell out the name Elakim, Aleph Lamed Hey Yud Mem. So if you spell it out, Aleph is like 111, then you do Lamed is 74, and then Hey you do Hey Yud, which would be 15, then Yud Vav Dalet is 20, and then Mem is 80, so the total number would be 300. So if you do that Im Chamisha Oisias with the 5 letters of Elakim, so that's the numeric value of 305. Right, so the Milah itself is Elokim, and the Arla is Elokim. One is the numeric value of its thing itself, and one is the Milah, the filling out of that letters. Nimsa, this means like this: Shetzarach hamoyel lechaven kisharoya arlas hatinek. The moyel has to have intention when he sees the Arla of this child. Shikay chadinim. That what's surrounding this child, and simply what is din? Din actually is also a concealment. So literally, the arla is covering over, is machasa on the atar. So literally, what's happening is that there's a concealment. That's actually literally what arla is. Arla is a concealment. So the moil has to think to himself and look at this and say that the idea is that the milah itself is the kasha. So there's like a double level of elikim. There's something that's called dine kasha, dine rafia. Dine kasha, dine rafia is like, in very simple language, is like sometimes like it's a very harsh judgment. It's very a complicated issue to get to it. Remember, the idea is really to get to the oir, to get to the light that has to be revealed. Sometimes it's a real concealment, and it's very complicated and difficult to get to that place. And sometimes it's a dine rafia. It's like a less intense judgment. So therefore, atuhu bal lematkom behavaya adnai. Now he's going to elevate them with Hashem and Adnai. Hashem and Adnai will be 26 and 65, which is 91. Sha'oila hamila. So you make a bracha when you make the actual bracha with the koil. So when you make a bracha al hamila. So you're saying Hashem Elikei, Hashem. Because when you're saying the name of Hashem, Hashem is Yud Kei Vav Kei, but the way you're pronouncing it is actually Aleph Daled Nun Yud. So you're saying Hashem, which is the Yichud of Hashem, Yud Kei Vav Kei, and Aleph Daled Nun Yud, is going to be mamtik. The dinim is going to sweeten the judgment of this arla that's now Elokim. So now you have the word Hamila. Sheikh Shalom says on Al Hamila, on the Milah, which is the Hamila, is the Hamtaka. The sweetening is going to happen through the name of Hashem and Elokim. Lechen Birchas Sheikh Shalom says Vanu is Al Hamila. Therefore, that's what the bracha is. Sheikh Shalom says Vanu Al Hamila. Because there's a very famous machlokes of like why the brachas do we say Al, when do we say Al, when we say Le. Right? There's a Ran, there's a Rosh, Taisus in the beginning of Psachim. If it's a mitzvah, a mitzvah continuous, whatever, there's different ways of saying. So that AriZal is chiming in and saying, Shlomo, is that okay? That AriZal is saying that the idea is that it should be Al Hamila, because Al Hamila, which would be the Yichud of Shem Hashem Aleh. I don't know, it's fine.
It's fine. I'm not recording.
All right. Shemat Hashem Lakim Pasha D'Mali. This is the Avaya Adna in the bracha. Hashem Elokim in the bracha. When you say Hashem, Baruch Atah Hashem, that's the Amtaka that will create of the Milah now becomes Hamila, right? These are the Stoisius. So this is what you do when you're doing the Milah. So the Arla is to take away this kisui, this concealment of the name of Elokim, and you have to machavan that you're taking away this name of Elokim. The second stage of the mitzvah is the priya. So before you do the priya, there's not yet the revealing of the atara. The atara is still covered over by this membrane. You got rid of the arla, which would be one thing, but you didn't yet fully reveal the atara. And actually, the word milah, like what does the word milah mean? Milah can either mean like in the Targum, milah means to cut, like a gzer, like to cut. So one that's like the cutting away of the arla, but milah also means like milah, like say like a mal, like it's coming from the word that's like a revelation, a speech, which means that in the milah there's two things. You're cutting away the negative, right? You're cutting away the atara. I'm sorry, you're cutting away the arla, and the second point of the cutting away of the arla is to reveal the atara. Right, so there's something about revealing, that the milah is a revelation, a revealing of it.
Is there also a connection to like the pad, to the mouth?
Yeah, we'll see soon. Yeah. Okay, the priya gischavim is galas atara. The main thing is the galas atara, to reveal the atara. What the atara is a different thing, but definitely, according to the strictest interpretation of the gilu of the atara, is until the end of the atara. That's the atara, the circle underneath. The mus yud. That would be like the sign of Yud, which is like the signature now that the child now has the letter Yud in his body, which is now Shem Shakai. That this is the name Shindalad Yud. Before, when there was a kisui, so there was a problem. There was a Shindalad. They didn't have the Yud. If you put your hand between your heads, so you have like a shin. If you put your hands, there's a vayisa. Vayisa Aaron is Yadav, Vayisa is Lashon Shin as Yadav. If you pick your hands up, if you lift your hands, you're creating a shin, the structure of a shin. If you stick out your hand, you have half very shindal. Anyways, the tzur of the body will be like a shindalad, which means you don't yet have the letter Yud. Will be Zgalas Yud, Hare, Shindalad, Yud. Now you have the name of Hashem. So the difference between the shindalad seems like obviously something that's very problematic. And you have this idea of like this demonic force that's present here. We have to understand what this means, but there's some type of demonic force that's present here. We get rid of it through revealing the Yud. So through doing the mitzvahs milah, which is the Amtaka of the Elokim, we're revealing the Yud. And somehow once you have the Yud, there's going to be Amtakas Adinim, and everything will be fine. And then he'll go very quickly and say, V'gamda kimilas peh, oila minyan Elokim. The word, that's what you're saying. So peh, l'chein moitzim b'peh b'yayin. Therefore you do mitzitza also b'peh, because again it's connected. The wine is the blood represents din. And you also take red wine, right? So veneer, like what's if you have matzah minas minay, it draws together and you're drawing it out. And when you do that, you're going to be mamtik all the dinim. And praiseworthy is this mohel that has this intention. So you have to make sure that you take a mohel that has intention. Derech agav, if the mohel has one mohel has intention and one mohel has better hands, you take the mohel that has better hands. You don't have to be a chacham. This is if you have a lot of intentions, make sure the tinnik has to be much more practical. No, so Maisa with the Tzemach Tzedek, someone came to him and told him he has two mohels. One's a big Yerushalayim, a big Mukubal. He has an old guy. He has shaky hands. The other's a young whippersnapper. He doesn't have good hands. He doesn't know any shakavanas. He's not 38 like you. He doesn't know any shakavanas, and he doesn't know any kavanas of the Ari. What should he do? But he has good hands. He's a good Schneider. He knows that. He said, take the guy. You machav the kavanas. Let the. Shmaite Moshe Moil Tinnik Bezois Hakavanu LaOilam LaYitama Brisoi Viskeli is Moyer Rob Yisrael. This is a very powerful words. Okay. This is Adkan Divrei Harav.
Who's that recording?
What? Who's that recording? We will see soon. But where does he say he's quoting?
No,
so that's Chaim Vital's writing. Chaim Vital's writing Shemaite Moyer from AriZal. But we'll see soon that the AriZal is actually quoting.
Can I ask a shaila?
A lot you can ask a shaila.
This demonic thing, the shandal.
Yeah, we don't understand it.
Is that related to like the Vachnacht on the night before and that, like that card that people?
No. That's connected. That's connected with Lilith, and it has to do with certain malachim, some dolphin. That's a different something else. That has to do with. I don't want to get into it, but it's basically there's the first wife of Adam. And it's basically a type of energetic idea that says that they want to have relationships without responsibility. That's what that represents. So therefore, when a relationship created a responsibility with as a child, that's why the Zohar says they want to take it away. So the whole thing of that thing is to soothe the mother to recognize that she has a child and she should become. That's boy, make of that. It has nothing to do with that. No. In the Sefer. First, before we get to their kanti, I just want to tell you that in this sefer over here, this is a sefer Kesser Shem Tov from Kabbalas Ramban, from Talmidei Ramban, and this is a sefer by Rav Shem Tov Ibn Gaon, one in Talmidim Ramban, and he mamish writes the same thing. You don't have it inside, but he writes the same thing. It's a kasher stakel timtza tzuras avav begid v'tzuras hayud ba'atara. Right, so the vav is in the gid, literally. So you're looking at that's why it's interesting because it's like visceral. It's like not you're saying like a kabbalistic idea. This is with the body. We're actually saying it's
the organ itself.
The organ itself, yeah. There's a vav and there's a yud. So he said the vav is the gid and the surah is yud ba'atara. This is Shem Ramban. How do I know it's Shem Ramban? Because in the Sefer Shushan Soidas, which is not here, he quotes the same thing. So Kunir, this is from Talmidei Ramban. Huh? We didn't have the vav yet. Yeah, that's the same.
So this is well perceived.
This hundreds of years before the Ari. So this is from the Kabbalah Ramban. They're already talking about a vav and a yud, and they're saying it's connected. But the yud, the ikir is the yud, is the atar. So we see already in Sefer Kabbalah Rishon talk about this.
The shin Gdala that he mentioned has any surah in the body physically.
Yeah, he's saying. So you say you shin when you do that. You shin.
You have to do a. You have to do.
Yeah, you have to do a ma'aser. Right. It's not. Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. That's why God in Sefer Aboyer, and the Ramban also brings us down. You're not allowed to lift your hands over your head, or else you have very deep kavanos. Yeah, like Moshe. Yeah, you're not allowed to pick your hand over your head, or else you do it with kavanos, especially if you're davening. I know people do this, but it's like a. So I don't have. But they go like this, not over there, like this. Yeah. So here's the Sefer Ekanti. So the Sefer Ekanti is also from Talmidei Ramban. And he explains a little bit more what this, with the AriZal talks about Shin Dalet. I just want to show you the Oisius, and we'll see what it means. He talks about this similar idea with this Oisius. Anikel Shakai, Salach Vanei. Okay. Anikal Shakai Salach Vanai, Shemus HaBoira Yisal Mishtan Lefia Pu'ulas. No, let me just read it. I have it up here, so I have to read it in a second. It's clear. Shemus HaBoira Yisal Mishtan Lefia Pu'ulas, a mitzvah Krishtan Pu'ulas Adam Bevarov, Avka Kol B'Kircham Sham. Okay, Zeh Hashem HaRemez, Boy Letzadek HaRoma B'Bris Milah, V'nikin Hashem Shal Amar L'Olam Dai. Misha L'Olam Dai, this idea of Shem Shakai, Shin Daled Yud, represents the world of Dai. Now, if you have only the Shin Daled without the Yud, you don't have Dai, right? So Shakai is Misha L'Olam Dai. The Gemara says in Chagiga, right? So the idea of Dai. It's actually a Rashi in this week's Chumash. In this pasuk also Rashi says that Kai. Kivish Nizga Yud Mishakai. So look what the Rekanti writes. When you take away the Yud from Shin Daled Yud, Azay Hishaduda, Umasalas Min HaKoyach Zechesson, was Zik Charav L'Hashem V'Lei Yadam. That if you don't have that, you actually have a koyach v'keas. So what's the koyach of the Shin Daled? Some type of chaotic, destructive force.
Like energy without limit is essentially.
Something like that. But something we have to understand what that is. There's some type of koyach that's manifest that doesn't have certain types of symptoms, certain types of agbalas, and it's shaded. It's like it's destructive. It's like a lot. It's a lot. It's big. Pirush. Then he says a little verb. Shakai and Shadayim. That Shakai actually comes from the word Shadayim, right? A bosom. This is like similar to like a mother that gives milk to a child. So Shakai comes from that name. When there's no ashpa to tachtonim, that means that the milk is not being given. Avram Avinu was not able to give birth to Yitzchak before because he didn't have that name Shin Dal Yud inscribed in his body. So that's why when the says Ani Kel Shakes, when Hashem comes to Avram Avinu and says, walk in front of me and walk, be tamim, become complete, which means you're going to go through the bris. You're now going to have we're going to add the letter Yud to your body, and once you can have the Shem Shakai, you're also going to able to have a child, which will be Yitzchak. Now, it's interesting that the name Shakai, I didn't have the Sefer also here. It's not so I just quoted it from the English. It's in the 32 Gates. That it's a name also, the Rekeach writes in Saudi Arabia, that it's a name also connected to children. That's why whenever the Torah talks about a bracha for children, into Avram and Yitzchak, it always mentions Kel Shakai. That name is always mentioned. Because Shem Shakai, when you fill the letters of Shem Shakai, Shin Yud Nun, Daled is Daled Lamed Vav, Yud Yud Vav Daled, the total number is 500. Yeah? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, so 500, which is the same gematria as the word pruvu. It's also the same gematria of Ramach, which would be for the male. According to Beis Hillel, right? You have to have a boy and a girl. So the boy is Ramach Evarim, and a girl has 4 more Evarim. So together it's Rishon base. Together it's actually 500. So the word pruvu and Shem Shakai is connected to this idea of having children. It's also Rami Yitzchak. It's gematria 72 and 216 is 314, which is Shem Shakai. I'm sorry, Shem Shakai. Is Shem Shakai, right? Okay. Now, so we have to understand what exactly does this mean. So we're saying that there is the body before it has the yud, before it has this name that's connected to bris, is connected to the word Shin Daled, and then when it becomes connected, it becomes Shin Dal Yud, which is connected to the word Shadayim. Now, what is the idea of Shadayim? What is the idea of Shakai? Which means that the koyach, it's a koyach to give, but exactly in the perfect amount. That's the definition of a healthy mother that's giving milk correctly, is that the child can be nourished, because the child, you can't feed the child solids. You can't give the child a lot. You have to give them a small amount, but just enough amount that they actually can survive. So Shakai is like a quality of shefa that's coming in exactly the right amount. But once you get that shefa, so to speak, from the name of Shem Shakai, this is what the Rekanti is writing. Then you have children. Then there could be like a hispashtus. And so there seems to be like there's hispashtus, some type of hispashtus, which is like negative, and some which is like a negative quality, and there's some type of hispashtus which is going to be a positive quality. Now we're going to try to understand what the AriZal means. What the AriZal means in terms of Pashat. What does this actually mean in terms of the physiologically, what happens when a person has a bris? Because there's a Rambam in the Moyer writes that the reason for the bris is to desensitize a person, the male. That's what the Rambam writes. And if you desensitize the male of having this type of cheshek, such pleasure, it's like a taming. It's like a taming of this type of a quality of this type of person's testosterone, or like taming, and therefore people are going to be in a more correct path. This is what the Rambam writes. I got this one. The Meshech Chochmah writes that Sasan Oichem Resecha Gemoitz Shal Rav. So Chazal say that Sasan Oichem Resecha, that kol mitzvah that they were, the Gemara says in Shabbos, the kol mitzvah they were accepted with simcha, with sasin, v'sasin, right? Adan v'sasin, v'simcha, v'sasin. So it's sasin. So what is kimoitza shalal rav? Why kimoitza shalal rav? What is shalal rav? What shalal is like spoil. It's a mitzvah milah is sas. What's the shalal? What's the spoil? Like what's the extra dose of what you're doing? He says because you're doing a mitzvah, which is the mitzvah itself, but the kimoitza shalal rav is because by definition, by doing the mitzvah itself, you're actually pulling away the koyach hatuma, pulling away the koyach yitzara. That's the extra spoils that you receive from doing the mitzvah. That's consistent with the Shittas HaRambam. So the Shittas HaRambam is the most, let's say, like logical. Like in other words, if you take a bris and say, okay, forget about the whole narrative. I don't understand why you do a bris. Okay, you take a male child. You take this is what happens. You do a bris. What's the result? Of what's going to happen. So two things are going to happen. First of all, the child is going to be marked. Okay, so that's the Shittas HaChinuch. That's like he goes with that thing. So it's like a chaysin bris kodesh. The child is marked. Okay, you're a Jew. This is the way you're marked. The other thing that you're also doing physically, what you're doing is you're taking away the foreskin. So what happens when you take the foreskin? This is what's going to happen. So we always want to try to tie the pshat, which is like the literal experiential experience of what you actually experience. Like, and the Rambam is the literal rational interpretation. How that ties into the soid, because Al Pisoid, what the AriZal is saying is that somehow by doing the bris, you don't have the shidud, you don't have this like chaotic, crazy, wild energy of shadim, of shindalit, but you have now what you created is now you created a yud la Torah, a yud to the vav, a yud to the vav. That's what the Kesef Shem Tov was saying. The yud to the vav means the vav is the male. Right, so the vav always the hay is the female, vav is the male. So the male being is now added a point. Like, so what's that point that he's added? Some type of dimension of the atara, and somehow with taking away the arla and adding the atara, somehow that's going to make a person into shem shakai, into a proper, healthy, balanced quality of living.
It's possible to have a vav without a yud on top.
So. No, technically not, but a full yud, which means you're saying that the
Shendala without yud, whatever.
No, you said, but every letter starts with yud. Every letter starts with the point. Every letter starts. Aleph, Beis, Gimel. Every letter you start with the point. So a piece sod, every letter actually starts with the yud. Mm. That's why Rabbi Sol Sarug writes that the first thing that the first letter that's revealed after the tzimtzum is the letter yud, because it's a singularity. Exactly, it's a point. From the point, everything moves. Right? There's an akudah and there's a kav and a shetach. The point comes into a line, then becomes into volume. But the point where you start, that's the yud.
What letter? Where Ma'aserishus?
Yeah, Ma'aserishus. Yeah.
Which?
No. He says no. He's like after tzimtzum. No. He's saying what's like the beginning of the base. You understand? What's the point behind the base? The point, it begins, right, everything begins with the point. Mm. Everything starts with the point, especially if you do it phonetically. So it's the most primitive sound is a one-dimensional sound. Let's say a child is crying, right? Then a child develops into language. But the first thing in the child is ah. I'm not saying it's a yud sound, but ah is a dot. right? Then the child is like, they figure out that if they cry in a different way, the father knows or the mother knows that this is what they want from me, right? But the first thing is ow. The first thing is the nakuda in sound, and then it develops into further, and then you have language. So language is like the evolution of sound. But the point of everything begins with that one sound. That's why the most primal thing is actually the one sound, right? The kol shofar. The kol shofar is the ah sound, which I hear it's an aleph. It sounds like an aleph, but it's the nakuda, one nakuda of that. So there's an interesting Torah in Ishbitz that it's found a few times in the Lech. It's found in the Beis Yaakov. It's found in many in this school of thought. This is completely a different topic, but it's the word. You'll see soon. The Beis Yaakov actually ties in, but in the Meshloach itself, Beis Yaakov is already the next generation. No, we'll go back to the Baal Shem. So the pasuk says like this. The pasuk is a pasuk mishalach. So the pasuk says that sus v'recha ram vayam. That we have to thank Hashem for sus v'recha ram vayam, for the horse and the chariot that were cast into the sea. Sus v'recha ram vayam. And this seems to be such an important part of the Shira that Vatan la Miriam, when Miriam wants to respond and say, you guys, the men are saying a whole long Az Yasher, a whole long story. Vatan la Miriam, it's like a response. A response means saying, I don't agree with everything you said, but I want to say it in a different way. Here, I'm going to respond to you and says, Vatan la Miriam, what does she say? Shir Hashem ki goy ga, sus v'recha ram vayam. That's it. Shir Hashem ki goy ga, Hashem is transcendent. Sus v'recha ram vayam. The horse and the rider were cast into the sea. The horse and the rider were cast into the sea. This is like the ultimate of the whole Kriyas Yamsuf is sus v'recha ram vayam. It's a problematic statement. Why sus v'recha ram vayam? Now there's a lot of interesting ways to understand it. The Netziv, it's not totally not on topic, but the Netziv actually writes something very sweet. That sus v'recha represents a hierarchy. That there's a sus and there's a roichev. And the definition of the Egyptian society is the absoluteness of hierarchy. Like it called that there was never ever that ran out of Mitzrayim, which really deeply means that in the ancient world there was a hierarchy of being. Like if you were born a slave, that was ontological. That was like your life. You were meant to slave. You were never going to become free. If you're born a free person, you can never become a slave. If you're born a child of a pharaoh, then you're a son of God, right? And if you're the pharaoh himself, then you're God. Then you're the deity itself, right? And you can never cross. In all ancient mythologies, it's like that. There's a certain hierarchy of being. That's why the Egyptians were sun worshippers, right? They were worshippers of Ra. They were sun worshippers because the sun represents the hierarchy of the pantheon of the stars. Like that's the highest. And then there was the lower deities till you get to Pharaoh. Pharaoh was the son of a god. That's why when Tzipporah names Moshe Rabbeinu Moshe. So we have Neufel Lashon al Neufel that it's that Moshe Kamina Mai Mishasu, but the Parshas she actually names him Moses. And because Moses actually means the son of, like Ramses. Like Ramses is Ra Mesis, the son of Ra. Ra was the sun god, and Ramesses is the son, the god, the child of the Ra god.
Was that Ramses?
Yeah, Ramses. Yeah, because of Ramses. Yeah, Ramses. Yeah, Ramses is called after Ramses, and that's what they named the Pharaoh was the son of God. So when she takes Moshe Rabbeinu out and she says Kim Ramayim, they believe that the water was also a god, right? The Nile was a god. So he's Min Hamayim Mishisu. He's the son of the Nile. It happens to be that in Lashon Kodesh, as the Evan Ezer writes. And also there's a Netziv over there that tries to figure this out. If it actually she spoke Lashon Kodesh, no, maybe she didn't speak Lashon Kodesh. It's a Torah's translation of the Egyptian way of saying it. The Egyptian way of saying it is that how does I say he's the son of the Nile? Is Moshe in Hebrew, Binamayim Yeshu. But in their language it says Masis. He's the son of however they call the Nile. So they believe in a very strong hierarchy of thing. And the project of Yitzis Mitzrayim was that Hashem says that B'ni B'chayir Yisrael. Well, that's like the objective. What's B'ni B'chayir Yisrael is? Just because I'm choosing you to be the B'char. You can be the highest. You can be like Moshe Rabbeinu. This is like that's what the project of Matan Torah is, the democratization of spirituality. Really, that every person could be Moshe Rabbeinu and could be Kohen Gadol, could be the flying of Flint. That's really what Ruchni. So he says that's why Sus V'Reichvei, that dynamic of the hierarchy was cast into the sea. That actually is epitomized. Yeah, the idea of sus v'roichavei was thrown to the sea. But the Meir Shalach has a little more chassidish interpretation and a more psychological. This is what he says. He says sus v'roichavei, and by the way, he's taking this a little from the Rambam, because the Rambam in Nevuchim, where he talks about the koyach hadimyon, he calls it k'adam haroichav el sus. So the Rambam actually uses this language that the sus represents your wild imagination. So it's already in
Like
either,
horse stats.
yeah, like horse thoughts, exactly. So there's already some idea in the Messiah of understanding the sus as a wild expansion. But he says sus moyer al mehirusli spashtus, v'roichav moyer al yishuv adas shemet samtzum as a sus. That's what the idea of the Roichev is. The Roichev, he's controlling the source. Gather, you know the famous, totally off topic, but you know the famous word about they asked the Toldos how he became a chassid from the Baal Shem. The Toldos Yaakov Yosef. They asked him how did he become a Toldos. He said the Baal Shem. He was the Rav in Polnoi. He was the Rav in the city, and the Baal Shem came to the city. And no one knew who the Baal Shem was. And he was sitting in front of the shul. He came like 7 o'clock in the morning when the minyan had to start, and he started telling a story. And he was a very good storyteller. And the people started going to the minyan. But instead of going to the minyan, they started listening to this man telling a beautiful story. So if 5, 10, 20 people are sitting and gathered around, the Toldos comes like 7:30. I guess the minyan is starting. He sees there's like people standing around. The guy looks kind of funny, telling a weird story, and he just runs into the shul, and he puts on his talis until he's ready to daven. He's sitting and no one's showing up. And finally, he runs out outside, and it's already 8 o'clock. And he sees the Baal Shem, and everyone's enthralled by this story. And told us, "Nutz, you have to start davening. What are you wasting time? You have to start davening." It's just Zman Krishna. There's like a lot of Zmanim here. Shkia already, if you chassidim, whatever. There's different times. So, and the Baal Shem turns to the Toldos and says, "Okay, I'm going to stop the story. You're the Rav. Okay, I'm going to stop the story. But I have to ask you one question. When you ride a horse, do you pull on the reins to let it run, or you let go a little of the reins? If you want it to really run, as a gesunter run, I don't know. I don't ride a horse, but I can imagine." He says if you pull on the reins too much, the horse just stops. Sometimes you have to let go a little of the reins if you want it to run. And he chapped the story, and he said he became a Talmud Baal Shem. So
It had to do with his Hanhaga, right?
yeah, of course. The Meishlach is making a chilik between Umas Olam, between the Klippa, and this. In Umas Olam, Be'esher Royim and Midas Olam Hazeh, Eilam Koyach Litzamtzam Es Atzmon. Rakim Espashim B'chol Tavis Nafshim. This is the nature of a person who has desire. You have desire. It arouses a certain. You see something, you want something, and you don't have any shulchan aruch. There's no code that says, okay, I can't do it, I can't do this. I don't know. You have desire. You're a human being. You find something, you want it, so you pursue it. How much do you pursue it? And until you get sick. This is okay. It's like, for example, you take a child, yeah, and you tell the child says, "I want ice cream." So says, "Okay, you want ice cream? You can have ice cream. Take this whole tub." When is the child going to end? Give the child a full tub of ice cream. So when he gets sick, when he starts throwing up and he starts going to the bathroom, he's going to say, "Oh, damn, I'm going to get sick with ice cream." Yeah, that's what happens when you eat a whole tub of ice cream. So what happens is, this is a muscle. The muscle of Taivas Elam Hazeh is that if you don't have any conception of a restriction, of any type of koyach hatzinsum, you just indulge fully in the ispashtus, what ends up being is there's an overload of that thing, and you actually feel sick of it. This is a type of being nauseous because there was so much ispashtus. Because I was, and by the way, this is called Balei Taiva. Understand this. Certainly people that really feel the Taivas on the focus level, they feel disgusted, they feel dishonest, they feel bad about themselves. So they first have a tremendous amount of ispashtus, like I want everything I want, and then when they get so much of it, they feel like sick about themselves. So maybe it's not physical sickness, maybe it is, maybe it's a psychological sickness, but you feel eroded, you feel empty, you feel lost. So this is the type of klippa. The klippa starts off with these ispashtus, and then it's sus, and then roichvay. Roichvay is the one that's gathering, that's the mitzamtzim. So first is the spashtus, the sus, and then the sus comes to a place of roichvay, where then it becomes constricted. That's the way of of Klippa. Aval Hashem Yisbarach Nemar Ki Tirkav Ala Susecha. The pasuk in Chabad talks about when it says that Hashem was coming through. It gives a module of that is the Roichev is Ala Sus. V'nemar Tchila Tirkav. Hainish Hashem Yisbarach Yitin Toivel Yisrael Kodesh Yavel Adam. Yitzamtzam Moisei. Shalich Rachi Yiris Anoisen. Vach Yitin Zagvidesh Achi Yichul Lekach B'chol Ratzon Liboy. He's talking about a particular thing, the way it's given, but it's also the way you enter into this relationship. The way we enter this relationship and the way to do things through Kedusha is that we have the tzimtzum, the awareness, okay, Kol man asal Rahman Shara Kavasei. There's an asal on Rahman and there's a Shara Kavasei. There's what is forbidden. And then Hashem says, okay, I'm not going to allow you to do that, but I'm allowing you to do something that's parallel to that. And in the thing that I'm allowing you to do, which is in the structure of the tzimtzum, you can be mispashed as much as you want. So I'm going to create for you like a canvas, a structure. I'm going to say, okay, you want to paint. Okay, I don't want to paint. I just want to paint all over the walls. Okay, then you're going to feel like you didn't do anything. Here's the structure. Here's the canvas. Here's the 6x6. This is what you. Okay, paint it. Go crazy. Tell your kid you want to paint. Paint. No, you don't tell him that. You say, okay, here, sit down. I'm going to give you paints. These are the paints you can use. This is the canvas that you can use, and you can do whatever you want with it. You understand? Then the child feels that this first is the tzimtzum, the structure, and then in the structure itself, there's the allowance for the hispashtus in the structure. Then it can come also the idea of the mihiras. So that's the way it works in general. That first has to be the koyach tzimtzum, and if it's done in the way of kedusha. In the way of kedusha, it's done. That first you have the koyach tzimtzum. I say this is defining my relationship. If it's a man and a wife, whatever the relationship, is saying this is the structure. Here's the healthy part of the relationship because it's within boundaries. And this is the structure that I'm having, and in this structure itself, I'm going to have where I can be mispashet, and that's that's healthy. Versus the other type of paradigm is I can do whatever I want, but then you feel like you feel constricted and you feel right. This is the Beis Yaakov writes is mamish the same idea with the bris. That it's not only talking about in terms of particular things. I do this or do that, but it also seems to be suggesting, we'll see soon, that maybe it actually has to do with the stage that you are in life as well. Like how structured are you in that certain stage that you can have allowance. Let's see. So clearly, Hashem is telling Avram, "Ani kel shakai." Shakai again is it's not the shin daled. So the shin daled, I think we have a little bit of a better understanding what the shin daled is. The shin daled means the koich of ispashtus that becomes shaided, that becomes destructive. It's like you say sometimes a kid is you don't say that, but a kid is being like a mazik. The kid's being like a shed. Basically, what do you mean? He's jumping on the walls. He's breaking everything because he has a lot of energy. He just doesn't know where to put it. So he's destroying. He's shaided everything. That's the shindal without the yud. So it was not told to this mitzvah. This is the famous question. How come Avraham Avinu did not perform a milah? Actually, the Gemara says that he was actually nitna, that he performed all the mitzvahs. So then why didn't he do milah? So the famous answer is because Chabala, you're not allowed to damage yourself, etc. There's many different answers. Or maybe B'chal, that the Gemara means after you had the milah. That's what Marsha says. Maybe after you had the milah is actually nitna. Who said before? Kim Kol maybe actually nitna. Okay, whatever. But that's so the Beis Yaakov is trying to understand this. The old mitzvahs be'emes. The whole idea of all the mitzvah, every single mitzvah is the shoyish of the idea is in the secret of the idea of milah. Because what is the idea of milah? Milah is the idea of tzimtzum. Right? Like we said from the Rambam. So that's what the idea of milah is. That's the idea of creating tzimtzum, constriction, limitations on the actual things that you do need. So it says you should do a milah, you should do a tzimtzum on that. Okay. Yeah, and he was worried before he did this, before he got the mitzvah. In other words, Avram was doing the koyach hatzimtzum on his own. And Avram, for 100 years when he was young, he was battling himself to do the struggling with himself to do the koyach hatzimtzum, but
Because of his energy.
Because of his energy. So that was actually the Milah. He was doing the Milah before the Milah, without the Maisa Milah. Hashem said, I don't want to give him that mitzvah because that's what he's doing. I want him to wait till he comes to a point where he doesn't need it anymore. Then I'm going to say that's it. It's it. You understand? Once he gets to the point that he's 100 years old and he's not struggling with himself, he doesn't have the koyach hatzimtzum. He said, now I'm going to give him the mitzvah tzimtzum. I'm going to say I'm going to point out to him that what he was doing his entire life is actually the tachlis hakavana of what the entire structure of mitzvahs are. The structures of mitzvahs is to create certain tzimtzumim to allow for the koyach of yispashtus. Right? So now we have to ask ourselves. So what is what's the ultimate over here? The ultimate is like this. You go through stages. Like if you're a younger person, there's like it says about the Baal Shem. This is very strange things it says about the Baal Shem to that. For example, the famous thing, the story about his sukkah, that the sukkah, the Baal Shem the Shem of sukkah, then they came and they said the sukkah is possible. Because he used doifen akuma with good asik and with good achis, he used that every single letter. Too many atayim. He basically, and the Baal Shems, they put on his head and piskim b'shamayim nafel and says the kosher shall be so kosher who, and it was a kosher sukkah. It's brought down. Meir Sharm, the Alter Rebbe brings down a mimer that Reb Zev Volf Kitzis was the shochet of the Alter Rebbe, shochet of the Baal Shem. Used to not. Sometimes he had a meat that he wasn't 100% sure that it's like that he wouldn't eat, but the Baal Shem would eat it. Now, of course, it was 100% kosher. I'm not saying it's not kosher, but the B'zei Volk was a big machber, and he didn't want to be a machber. He wanted to be a machber even his own hechsher, and that meat that he was machber himself, he said the Baal Shem ate it. So what's pshat? Pshat is like this. We're going to read one more piece from the Baal Shem, and then we're going to get back to this. It's from the Noemi Godin. But it's a vote that the Baal Shem, it's in the Degel, and it told us many times. Kasar Rav HaKadosh Mari Baal Shem, B'inyan Amidas, Gadlus, Vanova, Tukva, Nechusen, Divas, Achilus, Geyitzot. Let Bris Amidas the Gruis, Ilu Gedoz, Loyos B'shil B'chil Levad Scharneres. That the reason why there's such different midas, there's certain midas that will say, okay, this is a positive midah. A person is an anav. Okay, obviously an anav, the Torah says, anav mikol anav, obviously, anivus is a very positive midah. What am I godless? What am I like a spashtus? A person has a spashtus. Good midah? Not such good midah. What are these midas? He says it's not only for schar v'oin. It's not just you should say, I don't want that midah, I want the other midah. Okay, I don't want to be no. So like the Rambam will write that when you're going in one extreme, you have to go to the other extreme, right? To get the Shvil Azov, to get to the middle place, you have to make sure that you go to the extreme. Gada, besides Kas and Gaiva, which Rambam says you should go to the extreme, not have Gaiva and Kas. But let's put aside the Rambam for a second. And he writes it both places. He writes it in Shemon and Brakim and in Chazdeus. But over here he's saying like this, that the normal way, when a person is struggling, let's say a person is 20 years old, okay? Whatever your struggles are when you're 20 years old, okay? There's certain struggles that you have. There's certain struggles that you have when you're 20, which you don't have when you're 50. Certain struggles you have when you're 50, and then you don't have when you're 20. When you're 50, maybe you think about COVID. When you're 20, you don't think about COVID. It's not like an issue. When you're 20, you have other problems. Maybe when you're 80, you don't care about COVID. I don't know. There's different. Every person has be'erech, whatever stage in life, you have certain taivas, certain desires, certain things. So when you're struggling with a particular midah, and you don't have the control of the midah, so the only way to really conquer the midah is actually to ignore it, to go to the extreme. So let's say you have taivas, certain taivas, so and you can't control them, so you have to go to the extreme because that's the only way you're going to be able to conquer it, right? To get to a middle healthy place, you're going to be able to conquer it. You have to go to the extreme. What happens when you get to a place where you're actually conquered it for whatever it is. Maybe because, like the Beis Yaakov writes, maybe because he's just older. So certain things are not raging as much as they used to be. Certain taivas, certain things are not raging. So then, ultimately, at that point, you can't say that the reason why there's that midah is only for you to have bechir in the other midah. That the reason why there's this midah, this negative midah, is because I'm gonna have choice. I'm gonna do the opposite midah. You must say what the Baal Shem is saying is that there's some positive quality in that midah itself.
The one conquered?
The one already conquered, right? The one already that's not you're dealing with. So now he says you can have, actually, you can utilize it. Laviyam ala kodesh. You have to see how you can draw that midah into a positive context, into a holy context. Question Chazal: Talmud Chacham tzarich libe echad b'shminish b'shminis. So Talmud Chacham, okay, who's a Talmud Chacham? That's another shayla. But let's say you're ready to define yourself as a Talmud Chacham, or so you have to have a shminish b'shminis, an eighth of an eighth. See, already in Chazal, we have all these ideas of these midas being used in a positive context. A Chacham will understand which one, when is it right and appropriate, how to use it and where. Which I think what Baal Shem is saying is that ultimately, if you practiced enough tzimtzum in a particular area of your life, and at this point, you already overcame that issue. You understand? You struggled with this already. This is an unstruggled issue already. He says once, if the positive paradigm is to be a roichev alasus, right? If the paradigm is roichev alasus, means if you practice enough tzimtzum, and you have enough to structure gesund, and you have enough to structure, now you can have ispashtas there. Because now you're in that place where the ispashtas is only going to be in a healthy ispashtas.
Aren't you back to square one then?
No, because if
It's like you gave up.
no, it's only because you squeezed it so strong that this thing is no longer a challenge to you in a way that it can take over the part of your mitzvah. In other words, you can still be mispashat here because it doesn't have the danger of it overcoming that symptom. It shouldn't become a sus v'roichle. It won't become so overwhelming because there is the koyach tzimtzum. Let's say if I know this particular area of my life, I'm very zariz for I'm zari for this 20 years. I'm very zari for that. Obviously, you have to chacham ein roish. We're not giving a blanket statement and saying where and what. I'm just saying you can use your own imagination. I will give you the simple example because it's like externally based. You take a bacher that's 19 years old and you tell him, you have to, Taras machshava and this, and you tell him all these things, and the person believes it very strongly, yeah. And then one you tell him you have to get married. What do you mean? I just stood for 20 years. You tell me this is the worst thing in the world. It's the most terrible. I should not put my thoughts in. So what should I do? Cough shade? I don't know. Well, what am I supposed to be doing? You understand? But the point is that if it comes from that place where there's a healthy context, and you understand in its frame, you understand how to utilize it, then you can have a spashtus in a healthy way, in a correct way. Versus if you tell someone that doesn't have any koyach tzimtzum on that thing, you say to be mispashit, it's going to be unhealthy. You're following? Okay.
He got married, so he's on a canvas now.
Exactly. You have to, but there's also the tzimtzum of the canvas. You understand? There's certain halachas. Okay, fine. And when not, there's the tzimtzum. But when there is the opening of the ispashtas, there's the ispashtas.
It's like
I understand. So forget it. You don't have to go there. No, I understand. It's okay. I understand. So forget about everything I said. Think about the things that the Torah says you're allowed to do.
Right.
In other words, you sit down Shabbos afternoon and you're eating and you're a Baal Taiva. You say, what do you mean? What kind of Taiva? I'm a person that the whole week I'm very zar not to eat meat, which probably you should be zar not to eat meat. Whatever, I'm not getting into this. Because the Talmud Maritz also Lech Basa, you're not allowed to eat meat. So let's say you don't, and then Shabbos you sit down and you're eating like a fresserai. What do you mean? I don't understand. The whole week you're like so nizar to be careful of food because you're creating the context and you're saying in here this is what Hashem wants me to experience the pleasure. You understand? Think about the halachic issues. Forget about, because with ishbitz you can always go into the danger of the Talmud B'chatzma. Yeah, I agree. It becomes probably antinomianism. It actually goes and leaks into that. But I'm talking about in the Torah of Baal Shem. What Baal Shem is saying is there is areas in our life where the Eibusha gave us the tzimtzum that for allowance of the hispashtus in a healthy way. That's what he's saying. This is what the koyach of the yud is connected to Shem Shakai. This is what it is. When you take the aver of the Zachar, which has the madrega of hispashtas, it can be spashet. It has, the midas hayisoid is a koich of pleasure, like koich hatayna. This is the Baal Shem, right? So it has all these types of energy, and it can be mispashet. So if it's mispashet and it doesn't have the koich hayud, then it can be zera. It can be unhealthy. It can be all these the problematic different expressions, and that's the koich of tuma, koich of the arla, and the koich of because why? Because it's mishaded. It breaks. It hurts things. It's mishaded you. It's mishaded other people. It's mishaded universe. It's like it's destructive power. It seems to be constructive power, but you're actually using for destruction, for self-destruction, destruction of others, right? If you use it in other contexts, Torah says, take this, and create a yud on the tzur of the vav, like similar to what the Rambam is saying. Take this, create a tzimtzum to the koyach of this aver. If you can create a tzimtzum to this koyach aver, then eventually this thing will become a chaysim bris kodesh. So everything that will be given b'kedusha b'tara, and that's going to be the transformation of the shin and dalid and become to a shin dalid yud, which is the correct, exact flow that has to be exactly given. And this is what AriZal is saying. So what AriZal is saying is we're going to create through the tzimtzum, right? So we say that there's the constrictions of here. And we're gonna peel off the constrictions. We're gonna say, okay, this thing is there's a gilui of that Torah. We're gonna take away the tzimtzum of koyach Hashem. We're gonna do amtakas adinim. We're gonna take away the negative things, which is koyach hatuma. We're gonna create the possibility for kedusha, and the way to create the possibility for kedusha is to be chaysim bris kodesh with the shem yud. And if we do chaysim bris kodesh with the shem yud, we're gonna have happy and healthy lives. Berach.
So it would tie it back to why the Baal Shem was able to eat that meat.
I don't want to get there, but that was the word. That's the same word. It's the same word. I'll tell you a different mashal. In Shivchei Baal Shem it says that when Baal Shem was younger, he said that he used to walk in the street, and every time someone told him hello, it broke his dveikus. So he used to ignore people. He was trying to mechav, trying to be davak, and the guy says, "How you doing? What's going on? The Yankees won last night. Did they? I don't know. I thought you were a Yankee fan or something." So the Yankees were, I don't know what's going on. They used to bother Baal Shem. It was different things. Napoleon won the war. I don't know what they were asking. And stupidity. And the Baal Shem was trying. So he said when he was younger, he ignored people. When he saw people, he would cross the street. Didn't want to have prayer. He said when he reached a higher level of dveikus, he realized that he could talk to people and still be in dveikus. Understand? That's the higher level. That's the vart. If you really practice the tzimtzum, that you know how to be connected. This is the canvas. This is the structure. You can put anything in there. You come in, hello, bye. I'm still in Vegas. I can still be a spashtas from the place of Vegas, from the place of tzimtzum. That's the art of being a yid. The art of being a yid. That's why that's the raza de Milah is the raza of all of Yiddishkeit. To be able to learn how do we function in this world in a healthy way through all the constrictions that we have.
Same point like you spoke about the Milah Malka, the Shtabas.
Yeah, Berach. The Kotzker Rebbe once said that if you want to really be in this world, you have to be a tefach. Understand? A little. If you really want to be in this world, then you have to be one hair breadth higher. Understand? This is the paradox, because you think that if I say I really want to enjoy this world, really, okay, go enjoy it. You're gonna be nauseated. You're gonna end up like I don't want to say these names. Unfortunately, a lot of Jews that happened lately. Epstein or whatever these people that these chazarai, because pleasure, only pleasure. So this would you end up in suicide. There's no. That's the result. With no koyach tzimtzum. You understand?
So what does that mean to be a tefach?
It means.
So I'm
higher than this. I'm choosing to be there because this is the Eibusha wants. I should enjoy my Shabbos meal.
Level up. You live
a little, exactly. One tefach.
Somewhere between here and there.
Exactly. Ben gvul shnei alamot, between the two universes. We hover in the world. But that's how we can enjoy this world. Hashem said, this is the world Hashem said to enjoy. But if you do it in the right context, you'll actually have real healthy enjoyment that it doesn't become nauseating. Like you don't overload with ice cream that you have to go to, that you get nauseous.
Like if someone doesn't work, he's bored to that. If someone works hard, he wants the vacation.
Yeah, exactly. Same.
Tzimtzum is the real pleasure.
Oh, this is already shown that literature. Okay, no, everyone has their taivas, They used to say that by the Megillah. They used to, they read the Megillah, and the middle Megillah, the Nusach Megillah, you say the Nusach of Eicha. Yeah. So that's to make the Litvsha happen. So why do you do the whole thing? As if simcha nicht.